Good morning, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to yet another PODScast. Jeff, give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen.
We
Awesome.
can.
Awesome. So we are super excited to be here today with a couple of members, Starlight members of the Esri team, who are going to be talking about AI and pods and how to unlock smarter pipeline data management with Esri. There's some really cool content in here that's been specifically curated for pipeliners. So we're super excited that you're all here. Please note that we are going to record this and put it on our YouTube channel as well. So super stoked to get started. All right, so with that, real quick, you guys know I have to do my little spiel on pods. Pods started in 1998, and since then has currently been used by over 200 operators, and now in 40 countries all over the world. We just got Argentina, so we're really excited about that. And so PODS is a nonprofit, member-driven community specifically for the pipeline industry. And we are kind of three-pronged. So like we're three different things. We are a data model that is managed and maintained by the pipeline industry for the pipeline industry. We are a community of people and a network of people that help and support each other with the common goal of asset knowledge management and that digital twin focused in pipeline safety. And then the third thing now, we are training, right? So we now have our LMS up and running, and you can now get PODS certified. So very exciting stuff, of which we are going to for sure talk about during the upcoming Spring Forum and URGIS. So a little bit different this year. If you guys haven't heard, pretty cool. We're doing URGIS and the PODS Spring Forum side by side. So on May the 18th is going to kick off URGIS in the George R. Brown. It's a Monday. And so you got to come in on Sunday so you can be there bright and early for the plenary. They're going to be showing some really cool stuff. And then the Tuesday is going to be some great tracks all throughout the George R. Brown for URGIS. Wednesday at the George R. Brown in room 320 is going to kick off the Spring Forum for PODS. So that's pretty cool. So please join us for the whole week, because then on Thursday, we're going to do half a day that morning and close it up with our regulatory luncheon with the Texas RC and PHMSA. So it's a gross oversimplification of all of the cool stuff that's going to be happening. We're also, and you guys are going to get an exclusive here, you've seen it first, we're going to be showing and giving out our brand new t-shirts. So I want to show everybody here that if you haven't already, go ahead and sign up for those events so that you can get your free t-shirt, if anything, right? So we're really excited to have been partnered with Esri as our principal partner to get this whole week rocking and rolling. So quick items on terms and terminology. Of course, Esri, we all know, and this is all basic understanding for everybody, but let's level set. Esri is the location information model, right? So the platform with which to manage spatial data, your web apps, your maps. They do all kinds of cool stuff, some of which they're going to showcase today in and around AI. Whereas PODS is a business information model that's community source, right? We all work together as a community to build out the data model specifically for pipe-centric items, right? Like MEOP, fitting IDs, and then such. So as PODS 7 fundamentals are linear referenced, we are now offering two core PODS 7 models, one with linear referencing only, and then a second one with linear referencing and that connected network. A lot of people call it the utility network as well. So what's cool about that is that the PODS models are an open Esri compatible platform. They're a great database architecture for linear referenced databases. They standardize and modernize data management and reporting, and they're a great business risk and compliance and decision-making tool. So if you're not already a member of PODS, we'd love to have you. Please sign up early and often. It's a great wealth of technical information and expertise. We have some really great members, two of which you're going to hear from today. And then we have a ton of resources, right? Like I said, please come out to the Spring Forum. You're going to see a demonstration of our new learning management system and education library. You can also get PODS certified, so let us know if you're interested in that. We have a scholarship program. We have federal and state regulatory updates. All of this information is available to all of our members. And then, of course, our new international chapters. So we really are growing. Like I said, we just signed on Argentina. So this is very exciting news, right? So you can scan this QR code to go to the PODS LMS, or you can get there via the member portal on the PODS website. All of our members have access to this. Okay, so real quick on a couple of housekeeping issues before we announce our speakers today. One of which is if you have questions or comments, please put those into the questions box or the chat box. And we're going to get to those as time allows. If we can't get to all of the questions, because there's a ton of great content that the guys are gonna want to show today, then we will for sure get back to you afterwards. So please put all those questions in so that we can get you some good feedback afterwards. Like I said, we are going to be recording this. It is going to be available on the PODS YouTube channel as well as on the PODS member portal. And yeah, so with all of that, oh, you know what? I forgot to do a safety moment. So quick safety moment. We are turning into spring now, right? Spring is upon us. I'm very excited. Last month, I was in negative 18-degree weather in Canada, which at that point, it doesn't even matter if it's Celsius or if it's Fahrenheit. Negative 18 is just too cold. And now I'm back here in Houston where, you know, of course, now the weather is bipolar and the swings are ridiculous. So all of us are out there working in our yards and doing some spring projects. So please make sure that if you're going to do any digging that you call before you dig or you click before you dig. So you can go to 811 to place that call, or you can go to one call online and place a call before you dig. Even if it's just putting in a new mailbox, please make sure that you do that call before you dig so that we don't have any issues with hitting any pipelines underneath the yard. So, all right, with that, thank you so much. My name is Monique Roberts, and I would love to hand it over to Mr. Jeff Allen and Mr. Elvis Takau. You guys, Elvis is in the building. How exciting is that? I bet he's so sick of people doing that. I'm going to hand it over to Jeff. Jeff, if you don't mind, y'all do a little intro, and I'm gonna put out and launch some polls so that we can learn a little bit more about our audience so that you guys can kind of fine tune the presentation today specifically to who we have with us.
Fantastic. Thanks, Monique. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. My name is Jeff Allen. I'm the pipeline practice lead here at Esri. I've been here 10 years now, believe it or not. And, you know, everything that Esri has been working around in this AI platform is super exciting to both Elvis and I and sort of this emerging technology. But I'll let Elvis introduce himself as well. He'll be helping me out today with this presentation.
Thank you, Jeff, and nice to meet everyone virtually. My name is Elvis Takau. I'm a solution engineer manager here at Esri. I work on our natural resources team with Jeff Allen, supporting our customers globally. I've been at Esri for the last 11 years and love the work we do. Look forward to engaging with this community a bit more moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Elvis. Yeah, so what we wanted to do is kind of build upon a webinar we did a couple of weeks ago. And as I had explained in the webinar, you know, this is an evolving technology for us at Esri. So, you know, as we do more presentations, as we interact with more customers around the topic of AI, we continue to find new business uses and new business cases and start to evolve that story. But I think this slide really tells a really important point about AI and Esri. Is GIS and an extension, your PODS data model is being enhanced with AI, right? And so a lot of people say, well, what does AI do? And we say, well, what do you want it to do? What does it do? So we have this circular conversation because this is a technology that's really interesting because it's an intersection of some really complicated and really detailed sort of IT technology with enabling the business to use the data and use GIS in a more effective way. And that really requires two sets of individuals to come together to solve these problems because the AI technologist doesn't know enough about the business workflow and the business logic to sort of build it on their own. And the folks in the business might not know exactly what AI does to answer the questions or ask the questions that they want. But in the end of the day, we're trying to deliver more value to the organizations in their investment in both GIS and building the PODS repository, because none of this AI works unless we don't have good data. And we've been talking about good data for a long time. And we're actually going to show you some examples where AI can help us build better data, right? Which is kind of exciting as well. So taking the data we have and making it better, and then making that better data accessible to everybody in the organization through natural language prompts and things like that. So it is sort of transformational in the way that that happens within these organizations. And
Jeff,
so,
before you get started, I want to answer
yeah,
just real quick on the before you get started there. So, interesting that you say that, two different groups of people have to have a conversation. So, in the polls, the people that best describe their roles, almost 70% are GIS and geospatial, but then the next highest amount of people are IT, data, and digital. So that 14%. So it's good. We have both of those people that need to have that conversation are on this webinar. And I mean, on this podcast. They
yeah,
overwhelmingly said that they're here to see practical AI use cases for pipeline operations. And then the best describing the organization's current level of AI adoption, they are 50% said piloting a few targeted use cases, which is cool because even just a year or two ago, all we heard was, you remember several years ago when you talk about the cloud in front of any pipeline operator, they're like, we're never going to do that, right? And then even 2 years ago or a year ago, when you talk about AI and pipeline operators are like, we're never going to do that, right? And so you were quoted recently. Also, I want to bring this in that when you're talking about data and finding documents and finding the good data that you need to be able to operate your pipeline safely. You were in the Pipeline Gas Journal, and what was the quote that you said that how hard it
so
is?
it's like trying to find a needle in a stack of needles.
Yeah. I love the Jeffisms. They're my favorite. So good to know who's on the podcast today. Good to know that 50% of people are piloting some target cases, some use cases in AI. So I think you have a great group of people here that are super excited to listen to what you guys have to present today. Thank you, Jeff.
Yep, perfect. So sort of kind of level set on that same topic, why is AI powerful to PODS members and GIS practitioners, and this idea of being able to bring geospatial context and intelligence into these queries, right? And that's what we're doing, is we're sort of enabling a platform to be able to answer the geospatial context queries across the organization. So maybe you're not a GIS practitioner, maybe you're just interacting with your document management system, or you're interacting with your work order management system, and you're asking a prompt there. And that prompt might contain a geospatial context, or enabling that so that our system, the system of record for geospatial, can answer those questions. And then we see more and more organizations want to do more advanced analytics, looking at real-time data. This idea of predicting trends and patterns, we need the power of the machine to help us do that. It's too much data in too many different areas, moving too fast for a single analyst to sit down there and really pull the value out of this data set. So we need help from AI and help from the system to be able to spot these trends and spot these patterns, and then raise them to a human that can then take action against them and do something and validate that data. This idea of efficiency and automation, we're going to show you how we're embedding AI into the tools you do today to make your sort of routine tasks quicker and more easier to do, which frees up those very valuable GIS resources to work on other things. Almost every pipeline company we talk to today, one of the critical things that they say is we have too much to do and not enough people to do it. And so we need to figure out a way to be smarter with those resources. And AI can help us automate some of the work we're doing today so that we can use those high value resources to build on these additional areas that we want to see GIS used within organizations. And then really kind of this accessibility and scalability. We still think in some terms as GIS as a mapping platform, but we've been pushing this idea that it's a geospatial platform for the organization. And if it is, then we need to let more people in the house, right? We need to have more people accessing the data, use it really as a tool, and AI enables us to open up some of these really complicated data sets and analytical processes to engineers that may not be GIS professionals. Like continue to push that story of accessing this data across the organization by everybody and not just a selected few individuals that know the complicated query or the PODS data structure to put these things together. And so one of the areas that I'm really interested in is this value of AI in big data and geoanalytics. Big data, things like ILI data, CIS, real-time data sets, these kind of massive data sets that we're starting to see being managed within the GIS, and how that, analytics against that, specifically geoanalytics, pulling together all these different data sets so they work in harmony, can help sort of use that from a perspective of looking at preventative risk and decision making. And this idea of AI really supports this high volume, high velocity data, and how do we parse that and look at it. And so we think of this not only as AI as a singular tool within the Esri platform, but we see how it can connect to other things like geoanalytics engine that might be used in Fabric or Databricks, or maybe some real-time data coming in from Velocity or GeoEvent server, and then how all that comes together with the geoprocessing tools, and then wrap that in an AI framework that kind of hides the complexity behind the scenes. So AI isn't a replacement for any of these things. It's an enabler to help you use these things that you've already invested in with a little more efficiency and a little more value within the organization. And so one of those might be like helping me spatially enrich data for pipeline integrity and reporting, right? How could I do that really kind of on an automated way so that as data changes in pods, I can sort of hydrate the risk models quickly and maybe eventually get to the point where the AI tools are actually helping us sort of run risk on a real-time basis, and then pulling to the surface things that we see are changing in the model that we might want to take advantage of or sort of act on right away. So this idea of this sort of AI agent that's working in parallel behind the scenes, doing all this analytical math, and then reporting results as it finds things in the data that maybe we can address right away instead of doing it once a year or 4 times a year as that reporting process comes up. Because we all know, one of the most frustrating things is to get to the annual reporting stage and find out, oh, we have all these data problems we need to fix because the reports don't look right. And then we're going back and seeing what happened over the last year. Why did this change? Why did this class 4 increase so much when I don't expect it to? Agents and AI can help monitor the quality of the data throughout the year. And as it sees these changes, automatically raise those alerts as we're going through those processes. So this is kind of the idea when we sit down with the business and say, okay, we have this technology, we have these large language models, they are now spatially enabled. What are kind of those questions might that normal non-GIS professional want to ask of the data? And so we're starting to curate all these things, right? Because what we need to do is we need to find out what the questions are, and then we need to train the model to understand the context of these questions and how this relates to what's going on behind the scenes. Some of these might be very simple queries, like how many miles of pipe are within a county boundary or state boundary, right? That query might be fully be able to be done within the PODS model, or show me all of these anomalies that occur within X many feet of a water body. Right? Now I need to start pulling data from other data sets, maybe a living atlas, or maybe the other GIS layers or other layers that are outside my organization. And the normal individual doesn't know that. This is where the AI gets trained to say, hey, if you have anything that's asking me about water body crossing, this is our definitive layer that answers that question. And so regardless of where the organization's asking that, we know that the AI tool isn't going to hallucinate, but it's going to answer those questions very specifically for us. So that's kind of sets the stage of how we see AI being used within pipeline organizations. And so when we think of AI in the Esri platform, it really is kind of a core fundamental technology. So it's being embedded everywhere, but it does surface in 3 very distinct forms. One is what we call Geo AI. These are those foundational models. We kind of call these data builders, right? These are the tools that we've had forever that do kind of computer vision. For example, in a pipeline scenario, take all this new imagery I just received and find me all the buildings that I don't have in my DOT class building layer, right? That's a GeoAI tool. That's looking at imagery, looking at rasters, pulling out information, and building a data set for me. This has been around forever. I wouldn't say forever, but this has been around for a number of years. This is in production. This is AI, but more on the computer vision, kind of computer-aided learning or computer learning side of the platform. Now, the second pillar is what we call AI assistance. This is where we're embedding our own large language model into the tools that you use today, whether that be Survey123, ArcGIS Pro, the web apps. We're building assistants for GIS professionals to do their job easier. And I'll take you through what those assistants look like. So these are trained by Esri, right? They come as part of the platform. They're embedded in the platform. They have their own large language model behind the scenes that drive them. They're first being released using ArcGIS Online, and then they're slowly being added to ArcGIS Enterprise as those enterprise versions are released. And the third one, which I think is the most interesting one, is this agentic AI or AI agents. These are agents that we can build that sort of ask questions very generically or across the organization using technology called MCP. So we can have an AI agent for understanding inline inspection data. So regardless of where the platform inside the organization is asking geospatial queries, these AI agents are using your system of record to answer those. They're not going out to the web. They're not going out to other agents. They're actually using your data and returning those results. And these are an area where you can bring your own large language model to the table and do your own training. And so this is where we see a lot of companies doing that work around pilot projects and things like that, is building these agents within their organization. And that all sits on top of a framework that has these kind of foundational capabilities that we're embedding in all these tools. And so if I open that up more specifically and kind of a more in an Esri speak, right, we have AI intelligence at the client level, right, embedded into your apps, either Esri apps, your own custom apps, maybe you went through Experience Builder. Then you have a series of AI services. These could be those GeoAI models, like the one that actually infers where buildings are in new imagery. AI skills, like semantic search, code generators, looking at documentation. Again, here's an area where you can embed your own skills into the platform. AI agents, like understanding how routing and logistics, mapping, analytics, data exploration surface as an agent that you can then open up to the rest of your organization. Here again, you can build your own custom agent within that framework. And then these AI services, right? These can be custom utilities, can be text to or image to text, video, audio. These are kind of all component level services that we can embed. And that sits on top of your existing GIS tools, your PODS environment, these AI trained models, and your large language model, either one that you brought to the table or you can use embedded in Esri. So that's how this AI gets sort of embedded across the stack. So it's not a tool. It's not a thing. It's a thing that's embedded everywhere across the tools and technology that you use today. So let me take you through these, and then Elvis is going to show you a really cool demo, really specific to the AI agent workflow. But we'll talk about GeoAI. And again, this is the computer vision stuff that we've been doing for a while, where we take a lot of sort of vector or sort of raster data inputs, whether that be imagery, satellite imagery, bring that in and sort of analyze and read that data and create data from that. And do data analytics, right? This is all about those pre-trained models. You can go to our Esri website today. You can download a series of these pre-trained models using things like image analysts to embed them into your workflows and start creating data from these data sets. And then, really the idea here is those pre-trained models do a very specific task. They can be leveraged with some large language models, or they can be leveraged with models that might be already pre-trained or built outside your organization. So they're not specifically just Esri models, but they can live and be combined with other large language models or other models that might be available in the ecosystem as well. So these are just some of the ones that you can download today and start using. I kind of picked out some of the ones that might be very specific to the pipeline community: damage classification, building roads, parcel, looking at land cover. There's one for oil spills, looking to find transmission towers. We might want to see where we have high voltage transmission parallel to our pipeline. There's one for segment anything, so we can just ask it generic routines of how to do things. But these are all tools that you can, AI tools or models that you can download today and start using. And the next thing, which I think is really interesting, is not only doing that in the flat 2D world, but actually start extracting data from 3D models as well. So, we have these companies going out and doing sort of LiDAR scans inside of facilities, taking those LiDAR data sets and actually training the model and say, hey, this is what a valve looks like in 3D. Pick out all the valves in this scene. Or this is what a pipe looks like, or this is what a compressor looks like, and start building sort of objects in our GIS coming from these LiDAR modules that a lot of people are building. Because I think a lot of the use cases around 3D are really being held back by the amount of data people have to apply to them. So we can use these large language models to sort of dig into those 3D models. And the last one I think is kind of super interesting is we're embedding this computer vision in some of the apps. So for example, we can actually take an image in survey 123, drop it into the form and use computer vision to say, hey, what is this thing? And extract information from the image and pre-fill the form for me. So things like valve tags. Take a picture of the valve that says valve 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on it. Take that, put valve 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 automatically in the form and pull up everything it knows about that valve, right? That's computer vision embedded into an app and how we might use that in a pipeline context. So this is what that framework looks like. You have your input data, you have your GeoAI system, right? So this isn't a tool that sits by itself. It's usually put together in a larger system or a larger framework that we ingest, prep the data, label it. That's the pre-training of the model. We're running the model. We're deploying those results and then taking some action on those results, right? This is where the companies are really taking advantage, not just finding that, but let's take the example of finding buildings along the right of way. Once I've identified the buildings that are new, I need to then alert the field crew to go out and get additional context about those. Are they inhabitable? How many stories? Is it a single house? Is it a duplex? Things we wouldn't be able to infer from imagery, put that into the model, and then have some type of notification to the crew, to the people inside the organization doing class and HCA analysis that, hey, a new building has been identified. We've captured the data in the field. Now run class and HCA against this and see if anything's changed, right? So there's a longer workflow there beyond just the computer vision part of the tool. So the second part is the AI assistance, right? This is really taking AI and then large language models supplied by Esri to enable AI in the tools you use today, right? So these are going to be looking at sort of documentation. How do we embed AI inside of ArcGIS Pro, doing smarter mapping, putting it inside of Teams, inside of Hub. Out in the application you use today, really the idea here is to help find things, take action, and build larger workflows. That's what the assistants are really trying to streamline this experience of using the Esri products versus having just 1,000 tools in the toolbox at your disposal. And so the first one is this idea of the assistants inside of Pro, right? So whether I'm trying to find a simple buffer tool or I'm trying to do some more complex operations, we're going to enable AI inside of Pro so you can actually talk to AI in a very simple language model. It'll interpret those results and then call the appropriate geoprocessing or processes within Pro to get that done. So let me show you a quick example. This is what the team at using pipeline referencing is working on. So I can simply ask the question, hey, I want to do a realignment. How do I do that? And if I didn't give it any context, the assistant will actually take me through the steps of doing a realignment. What is the line that you want? What are the measures of the from and to? What do you want to do with that realigned portion? Do you want to retire it, or do you want to abandon it? And it'll kind of take you through all the steps that the tools require to finish a reroute. But even larger context on that is, here's a prompt where I'm putting in everything. I want to reroute this line. I want to start at station X. I want to end at station Y, and I want to abandon the entire route, right? The tool will interpret all that natural language and pre-fill the form, pull out the key information products for you, pre-fill the reroute tool with all that information you typed in, and again, then allow me to run that Esri function or APR function in this case, to do that reassignment. So again, making it easier for your end users. We talk about a lot, APR having a lot of steps that you need to do. What if we can automate that so the end user can just sort of do that all in one shot? That's the idea behind this assistance inside of Pro. The other one that I think people will be really excited about is, we often write a lot of small arcade scripts to help us automate tasks within the environment, not just Pro, but in the web maps as well. So now we have a coding assistant. So I can say, hey, I just need to build this piece of script. Tell me how to do that. I'm going to label my pipelines by OD grade, manufacturer, and date installed, and use this format. Like, how would that arcade assistant or arcade code look? You can use this assistant to help you build those tools. This is in beta right now. You can start using this today. I put the QR code on the screen here. If you're not in the beta program, you can sign up and get access to this. But here's an example of an AI assistant where we had a bunch of tanks, and we just want to label the tanks and calculate the volume, around that volume up to a certain amount, right, inside of things. So we're just putting in that text of how we want that prompt to look, and the code is running. It'll give me that value, and then I can take that code and further enhance it. So it's not just sort of embedding it in there, but it's writing the code for me. I can take that and then add different prompts to it, and ultimately, have that show up on my web map, and make that process a little easier to understand in the system. The last one is kind of this data explorer. So again, just kind of embedding this idea of a large language prompt or a natural language prompt inside of a web map. So I can just ask it from the portal perspective. Show me all the counties or all the pipe that's involved and that has an install date before 1970, right? Just ask that of the model. It'll go ahead and apply that query to the web map. Don't have to be in Pro, don't have to be an arcade assistant, but just doing that through our app templates. So this is just an example of how that might look, where we're just querying the pipeline data and asking it different questions and bringing back results directly in the model. So here we're asking it, how many miles of pipe inside of each county, and then we're asking it to show us the query it used as well behind the scenes to produce those results.
It's cool for tax purposes. That's really awesome. People can stay on top of that.
Yep. This one's really cool too. This is an AI tool built into Survey 123. It will actually build a form for me. So I could say, hey, this is a valve inspection report. I want to ask the user this, and this. You can just type that in or cut and paste it into here, and it'll actually build me the Survey 123 form based on the results. We're also embedding AI into the help documentation. There's a lot of Esri documentation out there. Sometimes it's really difficult to make sure you're getting the right information, you're in the right spot. So we're putting some assistance in there that specifically just read the Esri documentation and get you to the right spot and the help to answer those questions. Now, a lot of the questions we get around these AI tools is, where is my data? Is it in the cloud? Is it on-prem? Where are my models being stored? We've actually dedicated a whole section on the trust site. So this is trust.arcgis.com. You probably have used this in the past to answer different security questions, but now you can see exactly how AI is being embedded into the tools and where things are living in the ecosystem. And most companies, when we start having these conversations, one of the first conversation we have is around security and privacy and transparency of the model. So here's where you can go to get answers to that information really quickly for those people in the organization that start asking those questions. So, everybody wants to know, when can I have these tools? When are they going to be released? So the idea is, because they have a large language model behind the scenes, they're being released on ArcGIS Online first. So you can see here, here's sort of all the embedded assistance when they're being released in private beta, full beta, and in preview mode, and then general release. So you can see we're kind of marching out through the rest of 2026 into 2027 with the original ArcGIS Online. Every time we put up one of these slides, we kind of highlight these are subject to change as things evolve in the timeline. And then here's where we are with the enterprise release. I think one of the ones that I want to highlight here is coming later this year in 2025 is this item details AI assistant. This is going to be really important to PODS users because it's not just the PODS data model, but it's the metadata that describes the columns and the feature classes that PODS has. And so this item details is going to be a tool that allows you to hydrate that information a little easier into the model, so the rest of the AI ecosystem can understand your data. So this is sort of really key in how we start building out. So we think about the AI tools accessing your data. We also think about AI to help you build the context that those other AI tools are using. So the last one is this sort of agentic AI, right? And this is where we're seeing a lot of activity around pilot projects and early implementation of AI within an organization. And so this agent really is fairly straightforward. It's an autonomous piece of code that's working in the background versus on the server that uses a large language model behind the scenes, but it's taking input and it has geospatial context. So it understands how the tools need to be applied. It understands how to deconstruct the prompts that the user is giving it into geospatial context, applying that knowledge, solving those problems, and then sending that output. So this could be a very small agent that does something very specific, or it could be a very large workflow. But usually it's in combination with other agents. That's why we call it an agentic workflow. There's somebody that's kind of coordinating these in the background. So these are kind of little building blocks that we put together to build large language AI toolkits. So what's that mean in reality? So here's a typical problem. We have a pipeline PODS model. It has a whole lot of data in it. It might be complete, it might be incomplete in some areas, and we're trying to solve this problem. Think of this as the TBC problem, right? So how do we make our data better? One of the things we did is we said, hey, can we reason over that pipeline data and feed it, say, for example, the history of pipeline manufacturing in North America, and say, tell me in my data where my data doesn't conform with where best practices were over the last 4 or 5 decades, and tell me where you see potential problems in my data. Now, once that problem is raised by that agent, then we say, hey, call a secondary agent that understands our documentation and go search for supporting documentations for that particular area, for that particular piece of pipe, so I can either confirm or deny that information in my GIS is incomplete or incorrect, right? So this is a sort of agentic. So there's one agent that understands pipeline construction and continue to monitor the GIS. So anytime it sees new data coming in that doesn't look quite right, it can raise that as an alarm. And a secondary agent that goes and discovers and pulls back documentation from the document management system and put that together. Another example, and this is the one that Elvis is going to show, is this idea of AI-powered and inline inspection analysis, right? Huge data set, lots of different parts to it, a lot of historically looking at in Excel spreadsheets. How can we put that in a GIS and make it more accessible? So what we do is we sort of train the model on how engineers might ask questions in plain English, no SQL involved. The AI translates that large language into filters against our GIS data to bring back those appropriate results. It might look at that large language input and say, hey, this is more than just ILI. This is actually asking me about parcels or wetlands or road crossings or HCA that might occur in other spatial layers. So it understands that context and can reach across multiple data layers at the same time, and then can then result that, right? And maybe come back with a priority action list of ILI locations that need to be looked at. So for example, when we treat things like, hey, monitor ILI or evaluate or create a repair plan, we're really kind of teaching the model what that really means in terms of its data, and then doing that the same on like dent assessments as well. So this is part of that training part of the process where you need to take the engineer's knowledge and fuse it with the GIS professional's knowledge and the AI practitioner's knowledge. So all three of those people need to come together to build this so that somebody on the integrity team can do this actual very plain English query of the GIS and bring back the correct results because the model has been appropriately trained. And I'll leave you with this is, AI can help us inform, but the accountability still belongs to all of us, right? So we talk about autonomous, we talk about making decisions, like all that's great and help us with our job, but it doesn't stop us from being the ultimate purveyors of how we answer questions and what we do with that information. It's just the same as always. I can create a single prompt, but I need to make sure it's right. I need to make sure the answers are correct and we're making the right decisions. That same thing we've been doing for years also applies to AI. It's not a magic button. It's not a magic technology. And as you start dealing with it more and more, you can see the power of it, but also demystifies it quite a bit as you start digging into it. So with that, I'll stop sharing and pass it over to my friend Elvis, and hopefully he can come on and show us a little bit of a demo of how this comes to play.
Yep. Can you guys see my screen, Jeff and Monique?
I can. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Elvis, do you want me to launch the poll before you get started, or you want to do it afterwards?
Either way, yeah, Jeff, I'll let you guys
Okay.
decide. Yeah.
So maybe Monique, launch the
And maybe
poll,
you can
and
help
Elvis,
set the scene,
maybe
Jeff.
you want to fill in on anything I might have missaid or have additional context to on the slide portion.
Yeah, and I think I think everything you provided was spot on. I do want and I'll try to talk through this as I show the demonstration here, because Jeff, the scenario we're going to describe is one that Jeff had up on his slide. So, I want to show you exactly how you can start to interact with your web applications powered by agentic AI. So Jeff had the slide up of what an agent is and sort of those protocols that happen behind the scenes when we provide a natural language prompt. What happens with that natural language in terms of the agent interpreting that natural language prompt, using this large language model as its reasoning bank to actually do something based on the prompt you get it, pulling in the right tool. So we're going to encapsulate all of that here in an application. So you're looking at a web app, and this is, from the standpoint of that integrity engineer who is looking at these inline inspection data that they have, which is often a massive data set, right? You might be looking at it in a spreadsheet, but how can you interact directly with the map and sort of make those same types of inferences? And so that's what we're going to try to highlight here. So if you're looking at this map, very simple, I've got a pipeline segment there, but I've got this little box here on the far right where I can actually type my prompt. You can see that it says, welcome, enter your prompt. So I'm actually going to paste the prompt in here. And what I'm saying here in this first prompt is, show me where metal loss was detected in the latest ILI run. And so I've got a few different data sets in the map, right? I've got, my pipeline, I've got some inline inspections, I've got my reinforcement repair. It's going to use all of this data and find the relevant data that it needs to actually respond and give me an answer. So as I click go here, it's actually thinking that prompt is being sent to the agent's sending that to the large language model, and it's going to return with some information on the screen. So as you see now, it's showing me that, of all the inline inspections that were done, which ones meet the criteria that I gave it, right? Show me where metal loss was detected in the latest ILI run. That's what it's returned now. So it's found 10,925 locations. I could go and turn my pipeline back on, and as soon as that draws on the screen, you can see that all the locations that fall along that pipeline. So the other things agents do is that they remember, they have context. So I've asked it a question. I want to follow up on this question, right? Because I already have some information based on the question. So now I'm gonna follow up with a second question here, and I'm gonna basically say, of the metal loss detected, which should be evaluated by an engineer. So there are characteristics around metal loss that would cause an engineer to go in there and do some evaluation. But it needs the context of my previous prompt to actually return some more information. So now we're at 10,925 records. When I prompt it with this more, presumably more detailed prompt, it's going to use that context to return some more information. So now, based on my current prompt, it's returning 850 locations. Again, I'm going to turn my pipeline back on just so you see that it's still along the pipeline, because we've essentially said, hey, of that metal loss that we detected before, which of these should be evaluated by an engineer? So you see, we're starting to work our way through, but I'm interacting here with the map, this natural language, hopefully the way I'm not a pipeline engineer, but I'm doing my best in interpretation here. So let's take this a little bit further. So far, we've essentially been doing, queries working on a single layer, but now we want to do something that's more spatial, that will involve the agent using more than one layer. So we're going to ask it another question here, and we're going to say, of the metal loss detected, which are within 100 feet of a river? Because we've got a data set here that represents rivers. And so this is a bit more involved. It's still remembering, it still has the context from the previous questions that we've asked it, but now it also needs to take location into effect. And you can see that river right there. So it's actually taking a bit more time to think about this and give me a response. And we should get some candidates here that should fall within that river to meet the criteria that we've described. And the beauty of doing a live demo. So it returns 27, and I'm going to zoom out because it zoomed really far in, but you can see that it's within the river, and I'm going to actually turn the pipeline back on and turn the river layer back on, and we can actually zoom in a little bit tighter there. And if I pulled out my measuring tool, you would see that all of these locations that it's finding, and there's some other locations because the river goes all the way up here and stuff like that. But you can see that it's actually found some locations for me that meet my criteria. So this is us now just interacting with a map in natural language. We're not dealing with a massive spreadsheet, but this is what Jeff was alluding to, where we're getting to that place where, as you continue to add more context, as you continue to give the agents more business logic, you can start to really do some advanced spatial analysis with agentic AI. And this is what Esri is starting to do more and more of. So you're going to see more capabilities like this built into our products. I do want to highlight that this is an experience builder. And this is a widget within Experience Builder that we can use to do this prompting. And we have a framework in place to build out these types of workflows. And Jeff has started to work with a lot of our customers in your space that are trying to essentially take advantage of what AI can bring to their decision-making process. So Jeff, I want to pause for a second, give you a chance to maybe add some additional context here before I keep going. And I see a lot of questions popping in there.
Yeah, I just want to, we came up with this one example, but there's, 1,000 more, right? And this is part of that conversation we're having with more and more organizations. And, as a GIS professional, when I first started looking at something, I was like, this is just a query, right? I mean, this is a simple query. I could do this all day long, but, if I'm not a GIS professional, even just a simple query on a, million record data set isn't easy. right? We want to make it more accessible and more easy for people to use and more consistent. Because when I say what is it, where is an ILI on the top of the pipe? Like Elvis and I had to train the model what top of pipe meant. And
Yes.
that maybe that means from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock to some of you, and maybe it means from 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock and 0 o'clock position to other people, right? That's the intelligence that you need to build and bake into the models. Or where does that 0 o'clock position even live in pods? And is it represented as an 0 o'clock in string or as a decimal degrees from 0 to 360, right? And that's all that goes into this behind the scenes. So the easier you make it, the harder the training is in some instances. Malik, you had a question?
Yeah, so this is so super rad, absolutely incredible. I want to point out that on the question that everybody was given, which pipeline business areas do you see the most potential for AI? It's really split very evenly with the 5 options that were given. I see another option or another use case for this for emergency response, right? So you can,
Absolutely.
if you're utilizing the USGS water levels and water data here, right, and you can tell when a weather event happens, you're arming your non-GIS folk with a ton of information and the availability to be much more proactive and responsive to emergencies before cataclysmic things happen. So I think this is such a great example of really putting the power of operating your pipelines as safe as possible into the hands of everybody within the organization, not just GIS. And then I do want to say too that a lot of people have said that their expected timeline for evaluating is within the next 6 months. I think that based on this presentation, that timeline is going to get even shorter if you guys keep showing these great examples of how people can operate their pipelines safer by using these tools.
Yeah. And I did want to address a question that someone brought up, which I think is super important. There's a question about, can we pick our own LLM? You can, and Jeff alluded to an offering around the generative AI toolkit. That's essentially what that offering is. It allows our end users to pick their own large language model, bring it with them, and incorporate it into the framework that you build out. As an organization, Esri uses Azure OpenAI in a closed system, but you can bring your own LLM, and build your agentic workflows around that. That is one of the things that we've put a lot of emphasis on for customers, because you have your own preferences when it comes to those large language models. And then just I just saw the another question was the reactiveness of the application as you add more layers to it. It is equally as reactive. The goal is, as you add more layers to it, you add more, you want to give it as much context as possible, right? So that regardless of how many layers you're adding to it, there's no hallucination when it comes to the agent. So this could be slope, you could add roads. I mean, in a previous example, we had critical habitat, and we were asking questions relative to that. So those layers could exist in the Living Atlas, for example, and you're just referencing those layers, and they're in your map, and it will use that to return information as well.
Elvis, I have another question about layers because you're talking about data layers. So at PODS, all of our PODS members have access to all of the federal and state regulatory data, as well as all of these organizations. They all put out, data layers, the free data layers that you can download, and all of those we've curated into one spot on the member portal for PODS. When something happens, when they put out new data or new information, right, it's already all there, right? You can point APIs to it and know when things have changed. Can they bring in all? I know the Living Atlas has a ton of information, but these are all specific pipeline regulatory items for down to the county, down to the parish, down to the state. Can you bring all of that in as well?
Yeah. So I think, Monique, that's where we start to get into this concept of what we call an MCP server, which essentially what it does is it provides a protocol for agents to talk to external sources of data, so like
Okay.
APIs, databases, and so with when you enable an MCP server and you have that as part of your agentic workflow, and the agent can actually, pull on certain tools, pull on certain data sets. Yes, you can start to incorporate
Okay.
all of that.
But but it's still a closed system, so you're not
Yeah,
your data as a pipeline operator is protected in a closed system. Okay. Just want to
correct.
clarify
And,
that.
and I think that's where it's important for organizations to understand that they can bring their own large language models into
Okay,
play
great.
and keep it within a closed system. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
And inside that MCP, we can train on what the authoritative data is that you want to use that's maybe outside your organization. So it doesn't go off and just find a random county layer or a random layer of jurisdictional boundaries, right? When you ask a question relative to jurisdictional boundaries, we've trained the model to say, this type of question should be answered by this specific layer. Don't go out and find another one. Don't go hallucinate on something, but this is exactly how we want this prompt to be answered. And I think, going back to that example you had around emergency response, I think one of the parts of the platform that hasn't got a lot of attention is the ability to embed maps into teams, right? And we think about what
Oh,
happens when there's an emergency. What do we turn? What does everybody do?
yeah.
They click on their laptop, they open their email, and they open up Teams, right? So if we can have a map embedded into Teams and start asking that map, where is this? Where's the nearest hospital? Where's the nearest laydown area? And that
Wow.
agent has already been trained to answer those questions. Then we can
Wow.
kind of automate and help that process when God forbid it occurs in all the pipeline. But those are the kind of areas where it's not just AI, right? It's AI in something and answering a
Yeah.
specific question. And that really is where I think a lot of companies are struggling with, like, what do you want it to do? Well, what does it do? What do you want it to do? Right. And so
Mhm.
we're getting companies to sit around the table and build this idea and then translate that into trained prompts and then test those scenarios out and then release those into production. Right. So we're starting to think of like what that process looks like, not just what the tool does in those scenarios.
So Jeff, how does everybody participate in that conversation with you guys? I mean, I know there's so many hours in the day that you already talking to a lot of people. Like, how do they participate?
Yeah, I mean, anything relative to pipeline industry, reach out to me directly, right?
Great.
I can be that quarterback to bring in those resources to that. Most of the organizations that are Esri customers, that are large Esri customers, might even have an Advantage program, right? We're
Hmm.
spinning up pilot projects inside of Advantage programs, outside of Advantage programs, through professional services, through our partner community as well. We have a lot of
Hmm.
partners in the pod space that are doing some really interesting things. So we can help coordinate some of those depending on what that use case is and bring the appropriate resources to the table to help you understand how to move forward.
So I know everybody's going to want this, right? So it's like, how do I show my leadership how important this is? How do I lead my leadership to this, right? So some organizations, I know some pipeline companies, their employees, their compensation or their bonuses are tied to how much AI they're going to be using or piloting in the future versus other organizations where you're not even allowed to record a meeting, right? Because they want to keep everything right real tight.
Sure.
So that runs the gamut. I know that in my past life when I was pipeline sales, if I would align the solution to the leadership's goals, which are always safety, right? We can just say
Sure.
that as flat across the board. So, how would you help Jeff, organizations, and the people on this call convince their leadership that this is something that they need to invest in?
Well, first and foremost, if you're talking about feature classes and LLM and MCP servers to your leadership, you're probably having the wrong conversation, right? There's a place and a time for all that tech, but you have to start with the value prop and you have to start with the big picture and what this does. And once you have that a sort of executive deck, then you can start pushing it down into the pieces and parts that make it up. So that's where I see most people, they get really excited about a technology and they know all the buzzwords and they know all the acronyms and they throw that on a slide and they take it to leadership and leadership goes, I have no idea what you're talking about. So my answer is no.
Right.
And so you have to figure out how to eat that elephant and put those stories together. And I think the thing that is most valuable is to take it to a workflow and take it to a specific use case and say, forget about the technologies under here. Here's how this is going to work. An engineer is going to sit down and he's going to ask it these questions and he's going to get these results and it's going to make his life easier and we're going to make better decisions and we're not going to dig up anomalies that we've already repaired 2 years ago. Right? That gets attention. That's where you start.
So get out of your cube, walk down to the CP guy, talk about Rust, get out of your cube, go talk to the emergency response people, talk about what their needs are. Because at the end of the day, right, GIS is there to support, right, the whole organization. All roads lead back to GIS, right? And so get out and you're saying have those conversations with people to come up with those use cases, right?
100%.
And you're probably going to be willing to share slides with people if they need some help
100%.
in business development as well.
That's what we're here for, is to enable those conversations. And you know, I'll my foot stomping moment, urge us. Right, we're working on a ton of stuff we're going to be showing beyond what we've shown here. So that's the next great opportunity to get more information on what we're doing around the AI tools as we go forward. So it doesn't mean you have to wait to urge us. Reach out to us now, but you know, if you do have plans to be in Houston, that's going to be a great opportunity. UC is another great opportunity to see where we're going. This stuff is moving fast. So every time you talk to us, we'll probably be showing something new for the next 12 to 18 months.
Right. Well, Jeff and Elvis, thank you so much. We're at the end of time. I know we probably have some more questions. If you didn't get to ask a question or if you want to send one in, please do. I think everybody probably already has Jeff's email address, but even so, just throw your questions in and we'll make sure to get back to you. Again, thank you so much, Jeff and Elvis, for joining us today on this podcast. We look forward to seeing both of you at Urgis and the Pod Spring Forum as well. Any final words that you guys want to say real quick?
Just Monique, always thank you for organizing this and making this available to us as a platform. We think you're doing a great job for Pods, and we appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you. Awesome. We can hang out on this topic as long as you want. No, I'm just joking. All right. Thank y'all so much. I hope everybody has a great day. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Cheers.